The Grand Galactic Assembly Station floated like a massive jewel against the backdrop of distant stars. Ships from 12 different star systems docked at its ports, bringing delegates, traders, and hopeful suitors to the most important diplomatic gathering of the century. Inside the station's crystal halls, beings of every shape and size moved through the corridors, their voices creating a symphony of different languages and sounds. Princess Zarathek of the Vortai Empire stood alone on the observation deck of her family's quarters. Her 7-foot frame cast an imposing shadow on the polished floor. Her crystalline exoskeleton caught the light from the nearby star, making the intricate patterns on her armor-like skin shimmer with blues and purples. These were the colors of deep thought and sadness among her people, though few bothered to learn what the changing hues meant. She watched through the massive windows as another ship departed. The Calarian delegation was leaving early, just like the others before them. Their prince had spent exactly 17 minutes in the formal meeting with her father, before making polite excuses and requesting to meet her younger sister instead. "Your Highness," came a soft voice behind her. Zarathek turned to see her personal aide, Nixara, approaching with careful steps. The smaller Vortai female kept her own bioluminescent patterns dim and respectful. "Your father wishes to see you in the throne chamber." Zarathek's patterns shifted to a brief flash of irritation before settling back to the deep blues of resignation. "Let me guess. Another suitor has decided I am not suitable for their political needs." Nixara's silence was answer enough. The princess straightened her shoulders and walked past her aide, her footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. The throne chamber was a magnificent hall designed to impress visitors from across the galaxy. Crystalline formations grew from the walls like frozen waterfalls, and the ceiling showed a holographic display of the Vortai home system. Emperor Kethavan sat on the traditional throne carved from a single piece of star crystal. His massive form made even his daughter look small by comparison, and his bioluminescent patterns pulsed with the deep reds of frustration. Around him stood various advisors and generals, their expressions carefully neutral. "Father," Zarathek said, giving the traditional bow of respect. Her voice was steady, showing none of the disappointment that colored her skin. "Daughter," the Emperor replied, his voice rumbling through the chamber. "The Calarian prince has expressed great interest in forming an alliance with our empire." "How wonderful," Zarathek said, though her patterns briefly flickered with bitter amusement. "I assume he was quite impressed with our military strength and cultural achievements." One of the advisors shifted uncomfortably. Emperor Kethavan's patterns darkened. "He has requested to meet with your sister, Yelana. He feels she would be a better match for their diplomatic needs." "Of course he does." Zarathek's voice remained calm, but her bioluminescence shifted to sharp silver streaks that indicated barely controlled anger. "What were his exact words, father? That I am too fierce? Too independent?" Or perhaps he used the word frightening like the Andromedan prince did. "Zarathek," the Emperor warned, his patterns flashing with parental authority. "No, father, let me save everyone time." The princess stepped forward, her full height making her presence impossible to ignore. "He took one look at my battle scars, saw that I am taller and stronger than him, learned about my military victories, and decided he needed someone more manageable." The advisors looked at each other nervously. This was not the first time they had witnessed this conversation, and it never ended well. General Mordak, one of her father's oldest friends, cleared his throat. "Your Highness," he said carefully, "perhaps if you could soften your approach during these meetings. Show more interest in domestic matters rather than military strategy." Zarathek turned to look at him, and her patterns shifted to the cold white of contempt. "You want me to pretend to be someone I am not? To hide the victories I won for our people? To act weak so that weak men feel comfortable?" "That is not what I meant," General Mordak protested, but his patterns showed he was lying. Emperor Kethavan stood up from his throne, his massive form towering over everyone in the room. "Enough. Zarathek, you will attend tonight's formal banquet. You will be polite to all delegates. We have 3 more potential alliances to consider, and I will not have your attitude ruin our chances." "My attitude?" Zarathek's voice was dangerously quiet. "Father, I have led our fleets to victory in the Nebula Wars. I have negotiated peace treaties with the Outer Rim colonies. I speak 6 galactic languages and understand the political structures of every major power. But because I refuse to giggle and simper like a decoration, I am the problem. The throne room fell silent except for the soft humming of the life support systems. Father and daughter stared at each other, both their patterns showing the stubborn gold of unshakable will. Finally, Emperor Kethvin sat back down. "You will attend the banquet," he repeated. "That is an order from your emperor, not a request from your father." Zarathek gave another formal bow, her movements sharp with controlled anger. "As you command, your imperial majesty." She turned and walked out of the throne room, her footsteps echoing like thunder. Behind her, she heard the advisors beginning to whisper among themselves, no doubt discussing how to handle the problem of the unwanted princess. Back in her quarters, Zarathek stood before the mirror and looked at herself. Her reflection showed a warrior who had never lost a battle, a diplomat who had saved thousands of lives through careful negotiation, and a princess who had dedicated her life to serving her people. She saw intelligence in her large dark eyes, strength in her crystalline features, and honor in the scars that marked her service. But she also knew what others saw. They saw someone too tall, too strong, too opinionated. They saw a female who refused to make herself smaller, so others could feel bigger. They saw a threat to the traditional order, where females were supposed to be gentle and agreeable. Nixara entered quietly, carrying the formal robes for the evening banquet. "Your Highness, perhaps tonight will be different." Zarathek's pattern shifted to sad blue as she looked at her loyal aide. "No, Nixara. Tonight will be exactly the same. I will sit at the high table and the new suitors will avoid me like I carry some terrible disease. They will smile politely from a distance while seeking audiences with my father about my sister." "Your sister is not you," Nixara said firmly. "She cannot lead armies or negotiate treaties. She has never left the palace world. But she is small and quiet and smiles prettily," Zarathek replied. "In their minds, that makes her more valuable than all my victories combined." As her aide helped her into the ceremonial robes, Zarathek prepared herself for another evening of being the unwanted princess. She would sit with perfect posture, speak only when spoken to, and watch as potential allies chose anyone but her. What she did not know was that tonight, for the first time, someone would see her differently. The grand banquet hall was a sight to behold. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the massive space, their various forms creating a living tapestry of colors, sounds, and movements. Floating platforms held different types of atmosphere for species that could not breathe the standard mix, while gravity fields adjusted to accommodate everything from the tiny Flitari to the enormous gas giants of Nebula 7. Captain Marcus Chen stood near the entrance with his small human delegation, taking in the overwhelming spectacle. At 5 feet 10 inches, he was average height for his species, but here he felt quite small. His simple black diplomatic uniform looked plain compared to the elaborate robes and natural armor of the other delegates. "Stay close to the Terran section," advised Commander Sarah Kim, his second in command. "The Galactic Council still sees us as newcomers. We don't want to cause any diplomatic incidents on our first major assembly." Marcus nodded, but his eyes were already scanning the room with curiosity rather than nervousness. This was humanity's first invitation to the Grand Assembly, and he was determined to make the most of it. As a xenobiologist before joining the diplomatic corps, he found every species fascinating rather than intimidating. "Sir," whispered Lieutenant Torres, the third member of their small team, "look at the seating arrangement. They've placed us at table 47, right between the Waste Management Guild and the minor colony representatives." Marcus smiled slightly. "At least we have a table. 6 months ago, most of these species had never heard of humans." His attention was drawn to the high platform where the most important delegates sat. The Vortai royal family occupied the center position, their crystalline forms catching the light like living jewels. Marcus had studied their species extensively during the trip to the assembly. The Vortai were known as fierce warriors, but also skilled diplomats when they chose to be. His eyes found Princess Zarathek immediately. Even sitting down, her impressive height was obvious. Her bioluminescent patterns were currently showing deep blues and purples, colors that Marcus had learned indicated sadness or loneliness. What struck him most was how much space existed around her chair. Other high-ranking delegates had filled every available seat near them with advisors and friends, but the princess sat with only one aide beside her. "The warrior princess," Lieutenant Torres said, following his gaze. "I heard she's rejected over 30 suitors in the past 3 years. They say she's too aggressive for marriage." Or maybe she's just selective, Marcus replied, studying the way she held herself with perfect posture, despite clearly being uncomfortable. As the evening progressed, Marcus watched the social dynamics with fascination. He observed how other delegates would approach the Vortai royal platform, speak briefly with Emperor Kethvan, and then move to chat with the younger princess, Yelana. Not a single person approached Zarathek directly. She might as well have been invisible. During the third course, Marcus noticed something else. While others focused on their food and conversations, Princess Zarathek was quietly observing everyone in the hall. Her large, dark eyes missed nothing. When a minor dispute broke out between two trade representatives 3 tables away, she leaned forward slightly, clearly following the argument and its implications. When the Andromedan delegate made a joke that caused several species to laugh while others looked confused, her pattern shifted to show she understood the cultural reference that had been lost in translation. She's not antisocial, Marcus realized. She's studying everyone. Commander Kim followed his gaze. Sir, you're staring at alien royalty. That might not be wise. I'm observing, Marcus corrected. Look at her positioning. She can see the entire hall from where she sits. Watch how she tracks the movement of different diplomatic groups. She's not just sitting there feeling sorry for herself. She's gathering intelligence. As if sensing his attention, Princess Zarathek's gaze suddenly met his across the crowded hall. For a moment, they simply looked at each other. Then, to Marcus's surprise, she tilted her head slightly in what might have been curiosity. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered briefly to silver. A color Marcus remembered meant interest or surprise. Sir, Commander Kim said urgently. She's looking at you, I noticed. Marcus stood up, ignoring the sharp intake of breath from his companions. Where are you going? Lieutenant Torres hissed. To introduce myself properly. Marcus straightened his uniform jacket. We're here to build relationships with galactic powers. The Vortai Empire controls 17 systems and 3 major trade routes. That seems important enough to warrant a personal greeting. Before his team could stop him, Marcus began walking across the banquet hall. Conversations quieted as beings noticed the small human making his way toward the high platform. By the time he reached the steps leading up to the royal section, most of the hall was watching. Emperor Kethvan's patterns flashed warning colors as Marcus approached. Several Vortai guards moved forward, but the human stopped at a respectful distance and gave a formal bow. Your Imperial Majesty, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly in the sudden quiet. I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Terran Diplomatic Corps. I wanted to personally express humanity's gratitude for being invited to this historic assembly. The Emperor's patterns shifted to cautious interest. Captain Chen, we have heard little about your species. Tell me, what does Earth offer to the galactic community? Curiosity, Your Majesty. We are eager to learn from civilizations far older and wiser than ours. Marcus's answer was diplomatically perfect, but his eyes had already moved to Princess Zarathek. I have spent considerable time studying Vortai military history, particularly the brilliant strategies used in the Nebula Wars. A ripple of surprise went through the nearby delegates. The Nebula Wars were considered ancient history by most species, hardly appropriate banquet conversation. Princess Zarathek's patterns suddenly flared bright silver. She leaned forward slightly, her voice carrying a musical quality despite its power. Which strategies did you find most interesting, Captain? The hall fell completely silent. No one could remember the last time the warrior princess had spoken directly to a visiting delegate. Marcus turned to face her fully, giving her the same respectful bow he had given her father. Your tactical innovation during the siege of Kepler Station was remarkable, Your Highness, using the asteroid field as both cover and ammunition while simultaneously coordinating 3 different fleet formations. I've never seen anything like it in military history. Zarathek's patterns shifted through several colors before settling on bright gold, pure joy and excitement. You studied the battle formations? Most military historians focus only on the final victory, not the tactical development. The victory was impressive, Marcus agreed, but the thinking behind it was brilliant. You turned the enemy's advantage into their weakness while protecting civilian evacuations. It showed both strategic genius and genuine care for innocent lives. For the first time all evening, Princess Zarathek smiled. It transformed her entire face, making her look younger and somehow more beautiful despite her imposing features. Emperor Kethvan watched this exchange with growing amazement. His daughter was actually having an animated conversation with someone who appreciated her mind, rather than fearing her strength. "Would you like to join our table, Captain Chen?" Zarathek asked, her patterns now glowing with warm gold and silver spirals. "I would very much like to discuss the tactical implications of modern fleet warfare with someone who understands the complexity involved." Marcus smiled back. "I would be honored, Your Highness." As he climbed the steps to join the royal table, whispers exploded throughout the banquet hall. The small human had just accomplished something no prince or diplomat had managed in years. He had made the warrior princess genuinely happy. The conversation at the royal table had been flowing for over an hour. Princess Zarathek found herself genuinely enjoying the discussion with Captain Chen, something she had not experienced in years. The human's questions were thoughtful, and his understanding of military strategy was surprisingly deep for someone from such a young civilization. "The key factor in the Outer Rim campaign," she was explaining, her patterns bright with enthusiasm, "was understanding that the enemy expected us to follow traditional battle formations. By adapting our tactics to local conditions rather than sticking to ancient patterns, we could surprise them at every turn." Marcus nodded, leaning forward with interest. "That shows incredible flexibility. Most military minds I've studied become locked into successful patterns and refuse to change, even when facing new situations." "Exactly." Zarathek's patterns flared gold with excitement. "My father's generals often criticize me for being too creative, but adaptation is survival." Emperor Kethvan watched his daughter with amazement. Her bioluminescence had not shown such bright, happy colors in cycles. The small human had somehow unlocked a part of her personality that had been hidden behind walls of disappointment and rejection. Suddenly, the pleasant atmosphere was shattered by a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the station structure. The banquet hall's lights flickered and several delegates looked around nervously. "Probably just a docking issue," someone said. But Marcus noticed that Princess Zarathek had gone completely still, her patterns shifting to the sharp silver of high alert. "That was an explosion," she said quietly, her warrior instincts taking over. "Small but definitely internal. Section C, near the power distribution center." Before anyone could respond, the station's emergency alarm began wailing. Red warning lights flashed throughout the hall as the automated voice announcement echoed over the noise. "Attention all delegates, security breach in progress. Please remain calm and await further instructions." Chaos erupted immediately. Hundreds of beings began talking, shouting, or making their species equivalent of panic sounds. Some delegates rushed toward the exits while others huddled together in fear. The various atmospheric fields began flickering as power systems struggled. Princess Zarathek was on her feet instantly, her full height making her visible above the crowd. Her patterns had shifted to the deep red of battle readiness. "Father, you need to get to the secure command center, now." "Zarathek, you will come with me," Emperor Kethvan ordered, but his daughter was already moving. "Someone needs to coordinate evacuation and find out what's really happening," she replied, jumping down from the platform with surprising grace for someone her size. "The security teams won't know how to handle this many different species with different needs." Marcus stood up as well, his mind racing. "Your Highness, I can help. Humans are good at adapting to unexpected situations." Commander Kim grabbed his arm. "Sir, we should get to our ship immediately." "This isn't our fight." "It is if we want to be part of this galactic community," Marcus replied firmly. He looked at Princess Zarathek. "What do you need?" Her dark eyes studied him for a moment, then her patterns shifted to determined gold. "Someone who can think fast and isn't afraid to improvise." "Can you handle that?" "I think that's exactly what humans do best." Together they moved through the panicking crowd. Zarathek's presence created a clear path as other beings instinctively moved aside for the warrior princess. Marcus stayed close behind her, his mind already working on the logistics of evacuating thousands of beings with different atmospheric and gravitational needs. Another explosion rocked the station, this one closer and more powerful. The lights went out completely for several seconds before emergency power kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. "There," Zarathek pointed to a maintenance access panel. We can use the service corridors to reach the security center without fighting through the crowds. Marcus helped her pry open the panel, grateful for his smaller size as they crawled into the narrow maintenance tunnel. Any idea who might be behind this? Several possibilities, she replied, her voice echoing in the confined space. The hegemony faction has been opposed to these peace talks from the beginning. They believe diplomatic solutions make the galaxy weak. They emerged in a quieter section of the station, where the security monitoring center was located. The door was sealed, but Zarathek's claws made short work of the locking mechanism. Inside, they found 3 security officers huddled around a bank of screens showing various parts of the station. "Report," Zarathek commanded, her natural authority making the officers snap to attention. "Your Highness, we have at least 6 infiltrators moving through the station. They've planted explosives at key structural points. We're trying to coordinate evacuation, but the different species have conflicting emergency protocols." Marcus studied the screens, his human pattern recognition skills processing the chaos. They're not trying to destroy the station, he realized. Look at the explosion points. They're creating panic and confusion, but avoiding areas that would cause total structural failure. Zarathek's patterns flicked to silver as she understood. They want something specific. The confusion is cover for their real objective. "The treaty documents," one of the security officers said suddenly. "All the preliminary agreements are stored in the central archive. If someone wanted to prevent these alliances..." "That's it," Marcus said. "But they need time to access the secured files. Every minute we waste on panic gives them what they need." Princess Zarathek's patterns shifted to the cold white of deadly focus. "Then we stop wasting time. Officer Kexani, coordinate with the ship captains to begin organized evacuation." "Use my authority." "Officer Dalmuth, seal all access to the central archive except for the main corridor." "Your Highness, that corridor is where most of the infiltrators are heading," the officer protested. "Exactly." Zarathek's smile was not pleasant. "They'll have to go through us to get there." Marcus felt a chill of excitement rather than fear. "What's the plan?" "Simple human adaptation," she replied, her patterns now showing fierce joy. "We're going to do something they won't expect." 20 minutes later, 6 heavily armed infiltrators in advanced stealth suits approached the archive corridor. Their equipment had allowed them to avoid the security patrols and plant their diversionary explosives perfectly. The plan was proceeding flawlessly. What they did not expect was to find a 7-foot crystalline warrior princess and a small human, sitting calmly at a table in the middle of the corridor, apparently playing some kind of game. "Excuse me," Marcus called out politely as the infiltrators hesitated in confusion. "Could you help us settle a dispute about galactic law?" The infiltrator's leader raised his weapon, but before he could fire, Princess Zarathek moved. Her speed was incredible, crossing the distance in 2 leaps while Marcus rolled aside and activated the corridor's emergency lockdown systems he had spent the last 20 minutes reprogramming. The battle was brief but intense. Zarathek's combat skills were legendary for good reason, and Marcus proved that humans might not be strong or fast, but they were extremely good at improvising solutions under pressure. While she engaged the infiltrators directly, he used the station's own systems against them, turning maintenance robots into obstacles, adjusting gravity fields to throw off their balance, and flooding their communications with feedback. When station security finally arrived, they found 6 unconscious infiltrators and 2 very pleased allies sitting back at their table. "I believe humans have a saying," Princess Zarathek said, her patterns glowing warm gold as she looked at Marcus. "About the best plan surviving contact with the enemy?" Marcus grinned. "Close enough. I think we make a pretty good team." For the first time in her life, Princess Zarathek had found someone who could match her in both courage and creativity. And Marcus had discovered that sometimes the most fierce individuals were simply those who cared the most about protecting others. The medical bay buzzed with activity as doctors from various species treated the injured from the attack. Princess Zarathek sat on a medical platform, while a Vortai healer examined the minor cuts on her arms from the battle. Her bioluminescent patterns showed steady blue, the color of calm determination mixed with fatigue. Marcus sat nearby, holding an ice pack against a bruised shoulder where he had rolled too hard during the fight. Despite the minor injuries, both of them felt oddly energized. The successful defense of the station had created an atmosphere of celebration throughout the assembly. Captain Chen, Emperor Kethvan entered the medical bay, his massive form filling the doorway. His patterns showed deep gold gratitude mixed with silver surprise. "I wanted to personally thank you for your assistance today. Your quick thinking saved many lives." "It was an honor to serve, Your Majesty," Marcus replied, standing respectfully. "Your daughter's leadership made all the difference. I just tried to keep up." Zarathek's patterns flickered with pleased embarrassment. "Father, Captain Chen's contributions were far more significant than he claims. His understanding of the station's systems and his ability to think in unexpected ways were crucial to our success." The Emperor studied the human for a long moment. "Indeed, perhaps we have underestimated your species' potential contributions to galactic affairs." He paused, then addressed his daughter. "The hegemony infiltrators have confessed under questioning. They were specifically targeting the peace treaties between the Outer Rim colonies and the core worlds. Without those agreements, several smaller species would remain vulnerable to exploitation." "Then we truly did save more than just lives today," Marcus said quietly. "Yes." Emperor Kethvan's patterns shifted to something Marcus couldn't read. "Zarathek, the crystalline prince of Vega Prime, has requested a formal audience tomorrow. He wishes to discuss potential alliance through marriage." The princess's patterns immediately dimmed to deep purple, the joy from their recent victory fading. "Of course he does. Nothing like a little heroism to make me seem more attractive as a political asset." "Daughter, Father, you know how this will go. He will spend 10 minutes asking about my domestic interests, and 30 seconds pretending to care about my military experience before deciding. I'm too intimidating for his delicate sensibilities, Marcus." Watched this exchange with growing understanding. The attack had shown him how intelligent and capable Princess Zarathek truly was, but he was beginning to realize that her abilities might actually be working against her in the marriage negotiations. Emperor Kethvan's patterns showed frustration. "Perhaps if you could emphasize your diplomatic skills rather than your military achievements." "You mean lie about who I am?" Zarathek stood up, her full height making her tower over even her father. "Pretend that my greatest accomplishments don't exist? Hide the fact that I've dedicated my life to protecting our people? I mean, present yourself in a way that makes potential allies comfortable," the Emperor replied, his own patterns flashing with parental authority. "Comfortable with a lie," she said flatly. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Marcus found himself speaking before he fully thought through the implications. "Your Majesty, if I may ask, what exactly are you hoping to achieve through these marriage alliances?" Both Vortai turned to look at him in surprise. Marcus realized he had just inserted himself into a very personal family discussion, but pressed on. "I mean, what specific benefits do you need? Trade agreements? Military cooperation? Technological exchange? Cultural understanding?" Emperor Kethvan's patterns shifted to thoughtful silver. "All of those things, Captain. The Vortai Empire is strong, but in this changing galaxy, we need partnerships with other powers to maintain stability and prosperity for our people. Then why not work directly with Princess Zarathek as a diplomatic representative rather than trying to trade her as a marriage asset?" Marcus asked. "She has the military knowledge to understand security concerns, the strategic thinking to see long-term implications, and the diplomatic skills to negotiate effectively. Why not use those abilities directly?" Zarathek stared at him, her patterns cycling through several colors too quickly to read. No one had ever suggested that her skills might be valuable in their own right, rather than something to be hidden or minimized. Emperor Kethvan was quiet for a long moment. "That is an unusual perspective, Captain." "Maybe," Marcus replied. "But humans have learned that our greatest strength comes from using everyone's abilities to their fullest potential, regardless of traditional expectations." The Emperor's patterns shifted again, this time to deep contemplation. "I will. Consider your words, Captain Chen. For now I must return to the emergency council session." He looked at his daughter. "Zarathek, you should rest. Tomorrow will be another difficult day." After he left, the medical bay fell into comfortable silence. The healer finished treating Zarathek's injuries and moved on to other patients, leaving her alone with Marcus. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said finally, her patterns showing amused silver. "Probably both," Marcus admitted. "But I meant every word. Your father is trying to solve the right problem in the wrong way." Princess Zarathek moved to sit beside him, her movements graceful despite her size. You don't understand the political realities, Marcus. Royal marriages have been the foundation of galactic diplomacy for thousands of years. My personal preferences are less important than the stability of the empire. But what if there's a better way? Marcus turned to face her fully. What if instead of trading away your abilities to gain an ally, you could use those abilities to create partnerships that are stronger and more lasting than any marriage contract? Her patterns shifted to soft gold, hope mixed with uncertainty. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is simple and everyone's just been making it complicated. Marcus smiled. Today proved that you and I work well together. We come from completely different species, different cultures, different ways of thinking, but we found common ground in wanting to protect innocent people and solve problems creatively. We did work well together, she agreed, her patterns brightening. I've never fought alongside anyone who could adapt so quickly to changing situations. And I've never worked with anyone who could assess threats and develop tactical responses so fast, Marcus replied. We complement each other. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both thinking about the implications of what had happened between them. Finally, Zarathek spoke. Marcus, there's something you should know. Tomorrow, after I meet with the Crystalline Prince and he inevitably rejects me like all the others, my father will likely announce my betrothal to General Vorketh. One of your father's officers? A political alliance within our own species. He's wanted to marry me for years. Not because he cares about me, but because marrying the Emperor's daughter would advance his career. Her patterns showed bitter silver. He sees me as a prize to be won, not a person to be valued. Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. And you can't refuse? I am a princess, Marcus. My duty is to my people, even if it means sacrificing my own happiness. She looked at him directly, her dark eyes reflecting the medical bay's soft lights. But for the first time in my life, I've met someone who sees me as I really am. Someone who values my mind and my strength instead of fearing them. Zarathek, I know it's impossible, she said quickly. We're from different worlds, different species. But I wanted you to know that today, fighting beside you was the first time I've ever felt like I had a true partner. Marcus reached out and gently took her hand. Her crystalline skin was warm and surprisingly smooth. Maybe impossible things are just things no one has figured out how to make possible yet. For the first time since arriving at the assembly, Princess Zarathek's patterns showed pure, brilliant gold, the color of joy mixed with something that looked very much like love. The next morning brought news that surprised no one. The crystalline prince of Vega Prime had politely declined the marriage proposal with Princess Zarathek after a brief 15-minute meeting. His official statement mentioned fundamental differences in diplomatic approach and concerns about cultural compatibility. In private, his advisors let it be known that he found the princess too intense and intimidating. Princess Zarathek received the news with her usual calm dignity, though her bioluminescent patterns showed only the dimmest blue. She had expected this outcome just as she had expected all the others. What she had not expected was to feel relief instead of disappointment. Emperor Kethvan summoned both his daughter and General Vorketh to the throne chamber that afternoon. The general arrived in his finest ceremonial armor, his patterns displaying confident gold and silver. He had been waiting for this moment for years. General Vorketh, the emperor began, his voice formal and official. You have served our empire with honor and distinction. Your military record is exemplary and your loyalty is beyond question. Thank you, Your Majesty, the general replied, bowing deeply. Therefore, I am prepared to announce your betrothal to Princess Zarathek, to be formalized at the conclusion of the Grand Assembly. Zarathek stood perfectly still, her patterns carefully neutral. She had prepared herself for this moment, knowing it was inevitable. Her duty to her people came before her personal desires, no matter how much her heart might protest. But before General Vorketh could respond, the throne chamber doors opened. Captain Marcus Chen entered, flanked by Commander Kim and Lieutenant Torres. All three humans wore their formal diplomatic uniforms and carried official document cases. Your Imperial Majesty, Marcus said, bowing respectfully, I request permission to present a formal proposal from the Terran Diplomatic Corps. Emperor Kethvan's patterns flickered with surprise. Captain, this is not an appropriate time for trade negotiations. This is not about trade, Your Majesty. This concerns Princess Zarathek directly. General Vorketh's patterns flashed angry red. Human, you will not interfere in Vortai internal affairs. Marcus ignored the general and focused on the Emperor. Your Majesty, yesterday's events prove something important. The galaxy faces new challenges that require new solutions. Traditional approaches are no longer sufficient. Explain, the Emperor said, his patterns shifting to cautious interest. Commander Kim stepped forward and activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air showing star charts, trade routes, and diplomatic networks. The hegemony attack was not an isolated incident. Our intelligence networks have identified similar threats throughout the galaxy. Small factions are trying to destabilize the peace process because they profit from conflict and division. What does this have to do with my daughter? Emperor Kethvan asked. Marcus moved closer to the hologram, his voice gaining strength and confidence. Yesterday, Princess Zarathek and I proved that different species working together can accomplish things neither could achieve alone. We stopped the attack not through military force alone, but through combining Vortai tactical expertise with human adaptability and creative problem-solving. Zarathek's patterns began to brighten with silver curiosity. She had no idea where Marcus was going with this, but his passion was unmistakable. Therefore, Marcus continued, the Terran government would like to propose something unprecedented. We invite Princess Zarathek to serve as the first Galactic Alliance coordinator, a position that would unite her military expertise, diplomatic skills, and strategic intelligence to create new forms of cooperation between species. The throne chamber fell completely silent. General Vorketh's patterns had shifted to confused orange, while Emperor Kethvan showed deep silver contemplation. This position would not be ceremonial, Commander Kim added. Princess Zarathek would have real authority to negotiate security agreements, coordinate defensive responses to threats like the hegemony, and develop new diplomatic protocols that make use of each species' unique strengths. More importantly, Marcus said, looking directly at Zarathek, it would allow her to use all of her abilities in service to galactic peace, rather than hiding parts of herself to make others comfortable. Princess Zarathek's patterns were now cycling through rapid changes, gold excitement, silver surprise, and something that looked like hope. You're offering me a job. We're offering you a partnership, Marcus replied. Earth would serve as the neutral headquarters for this new alliance. You would work directly with representatives from every major species to build the kind of cooperative relationships that can prevent conflicts before they start. General Vorketh stepped forward, his patterns now showing deep red anger. This is ridiculous. The princess belongs with her own people, fulfilling her proper role as a Vortai wife and mother. With respect, General, Marcus said, his voice calm but firm, Princess Zarathek belongs wherever her talents can do the most good for the galaxy. Yesterday proved she's one of the most capable strategists and diplomats I've ever worked with. Wasting those abilities on traditional marriage expectations would be a loss for everyone. Emperor Kethvan studied the holographic displays, his patterns showing deep thought. This position you describe, what authority would she have? Lieutenant Torres activated another set of displays. Full diplomatic immunity, access to all participating species intelligence networks, and the power to negotiate binding agreements between civilizations. She would essentially be the galaxy's first minister of interspecies cooperation. And what would Earth gain from this arrangement? The Emperor asked shrewdly. Marcus smiled. The same thing everyone would gain, a safer, more cooperative galaxy. But personally, I would gain the privilege of continuing to work with someone I deeply respect and admire. Zarathek's patterns flared brilliant gold. For the first time in years, someone was offering her a future, based on who she was rather than who others wanted her to be. Father, she said, her voice stronger than it had been in months. This is what I want. This is what I was meant to do. Emperor Kethvan looked at his daughter's radiant patterns, then at the human who had somehow seen her potential when no one else could. General Vorketh, you have served our empire well, but I believe my daughter's talents may serve the entire galaxy better in this new role. General Vorketh's patterns showed furious red, but he could hardly argue against an arrangement that would increase Vortai influence throughout the galaxy. Very well, the Emperor said formally. Princess Zarathek, do you accept this position? I do, Father. Then let it be recorded that the Vortai Empire supports this new Galactic Alliance initiative. 3 months later, Princess Zarathek stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Alliance headquarters orbiting Earth. Her quarters were designed to accommodate her height and atmospheric needs, but what she valued most was the view of the blue-green planet below, a world that had welcomed her not as a political asset, but as a valued partner. Marcus found her there, as he did most evenings when their busy schedules allowed. "The Andromedan trade dispute has been resolved," he reported. "Your suggestion about using cultural exchange programs instead of economic sanctions worked perfectly." "Our suggestion," she corrected, her patterns showing warm gold contentment. "I could not have understood their cultural concerns without your insights into human psychology." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Earth turn slowly below them. Around them, beings from dozens of species worked together in the Alliance headquarters, building the kind of cooperative future that had seemed impossible just months before. "Do you ever regret it?" Marcus asked quietly. "Giving up the traditional path?" Zarathek's patterns shifted to brilliant, joyful gold as she took his hand in hers. "How could I regret finding where I truly belong?" In the months that followed, their partnership would prevent 3 potential wars, establish trade relationships between former enemies, and create the foundation for lasting galactic peace. But more than that, they had proved something that would change the galaxy forever: that the greatest strength comes not from following old traditions, but from having the courage to build something new together. The human had not just taken the fierce alien princess's hand, he had helped her reach for the stars.